Welcome to episode 5 of the Golden Point podcast. As you can see, we're in a studio. We're joined with regulars, Boosh and folks. And yeah, we're going to get straight into it.
So for this episode of the Golden Point podcast, we're going to be reviewing each team's season that they had this year and placing them in a tier list. S tier being the best that a team could have done in the season, and F tier being a team that really underperformed to what they did this season. So we'll start off with the Broncos. So in 2023, the Broncos ended up finishing second and made it all the way to the grand final, where they were ultimately beaten by a comeback from Penrith in the last 20 minutes. Going into this season, expectations were really high for the Broncos to make the finals again, but that didn't really work out with them finishing 12th in the ladder. Key losses such as Herbie Farnworth and Kurt Capewell really hurt the Broncos team this season, and injuries to all their key players throughout the season really hindered their season.
Personally, back to Kevin Walters, I don't think Kevy deserved the sacking.
Yeah.
But, it's just how the NRL works. Your players don't play well, your coach gets sacked. I think the Broncos heavily underperformed. They had a few shining lights in the season, so I'm not going to drop them down in F. I'm probably going to place them in D for this season.
I was thinking more C to with Broncos. I think that's a fair choice there. F is just way too low.
Yeah, I think the injuries really did hurt the Broncos throughout the season. They lost Adam Reynolds for about more than half of the season, I believe. And Payne Haas was out for around eight weeks. So I think if they had both Reynolds, Haas, Walsh all fit and firing for most of the season, I would have seen them finishing maybe towards the bottom half of the A. But still doesn't warrant how well they did this season. I would also put them in the D tier. Yep. So averages out to a D tier placement for the Broncos. D-tier. All right, next team up. Probably the biggest surprise of the competition, the Bulldogs.
Doggies.
Cameron Ciraldo coming into the Bulldogs really helped them out. Yeah. Key signings, Josh Curran and Stephen Crichton being appointed as the captain was a good move for them. They went from finishing 15th to finishing 6th at the end of the season and had the second best defense in the league with Cronulla behind Penrith.
Even with the Adokar incident, they still managed to play good. Didn't they play finals week 1?
They played finals week 1.
Adokar didn't play that game, did he?
No, he didn't.
Okay, so they lost that game, yeah.
Look, personally, I think the Bulldogs had an amazing year. A really big step up from last year. I think, unfortunately for them, that Josh Adokar incident kind of derailed their finals a bit. It was a very tight game against Manly. I'm pretty sure that try was scored on Adokar's wing, which is where he has experience, especially in these big games. So I think he did let down the Doggies a lot this season. Nonetheless, I'm giving the Doggies an A for this season.
I think S is too high. I'm going to just go A2 as well.
Yeah, I think this is probably the one that we're all going to go.
That's probably fair, A. Yeah.
A is probably the best thing to go for them, because I don't believe if they made semi-finals, I would put them in the S tier, yeah. But going from like a wooden spoon team contesting to playing finals and having a great defense, I would put them in the A tier as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Next team up, we have the Cowboys. So, Cowboys last season ended up finishing 11th, and they ended up clicking again this season and finishing 5th, I think.
That's still really good, yeah.
Dropping Townsend towards the back end of the season, I think, was probably a good decision for them, as Clifford really allowed Dearden to do what he does best, and as being a running 5'8", and he really showed why he was the best 5'8" in the comp towards the end of the season. So, where do we have them, boys?
Look, I think with the Cowboys, it's just they're too inconsistent for me. If we wind back to 2022, they finished in 3rd, I believe.
3rd, yeah.
Then 2023, they obviously finished in 11th. 2024, they're back up in the 8th. Not much has changed from their team, apart from Townsend being dropped back in the season. I do believe Dearden was a really big shining light, but I just don't think that it's anything impressive for the Cowboys going from that bottom half of the table to the top half of the table. So I'll probably give them a B. Yeah, I'll probably put them in B. I would say C just because of how disappointing they were come finals.
Yeah.
But I do think they did have some good moments, so I'll put them in the B tier.
Yeah, I'm going to go C. I reckon that's a fair point there. They were 11th, 2023, and now they finished, what, was it 5th?
5th.
Yeah, that's still a pretty big jump, making the 8 within a year. So I reckon C is a fair point there.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm tossing up between putting him like towards the higher end of the C tier or the lower end of the B tier. I think you made a good point about them being very inconsistent, James. I think this season is probably going to be the best season they're going to have for, I'd say, the next 2 years because of their losses coming into next year. So I think I'm going to stick with them in the C tier.
Yeah, I'm happy high C tier. I think.
High C tier, we'll put them towards the top of the C tier. All right, next team up, we have the Dolphins. Wayne Bennett's second season in charge of the Dolphins, and he brought in some big players. Herbie Farnworth and Jake Averillo were the highlights of their transfer window at the end of the side of this season. And they went from finishing 13th to almost making the 8th, finishing 10th.
That's still pretty good from, a new club. Making what? 13th? That's good.
Look, I don't think the Dolphins' year was all that bad. They were only one win off that top 8. They finished on, I believe, 28 points. Newcastle finished on 30. During that first half of the season, they were flying. They were right up there in the 8. I generally thought for the first half of the season that they were going to make the 8, especially with a coach like Wayne Bennett. They did lose Herbie Farnworth for a bit. I think one of their biggest losses was Thomas Flegler. That really hurt their season, so I'm probably going to put them in the C tier. They did have great potential this year, though.
It's still a pretty impressive jump from a new club making 11th place, especially with a good coach like Bennett. He's got a lot to bring, especially he's going to South next year, so that's pretty good for South fans.
Yeah.
I reckon C is a fair call here for Broncos.
Yeah, I think C.
Dolphins.
I think C is probably the best place to put them. I don't think they had a better season than the Cowboys, but it's still a slight improvement for their standards.
I agree with that.
I want to see where you boys put my team here. We got the Dragons up next.
Oh, the Dragons! The Dragons!
Yeah, okay, Dragons. Very big improvement from this season. I did not expect them to do this well this season for their standards. Almost got the wooden spoon last year, finishing 16th, only a win behind the Tigers, who won the wooden spoon.
That's pretty shocking.
I mean, I think
place,
the appointment of Shane Flanagan at the
Tigers.
start of this season, I think, really helped us. I didn't think he was going to move us towards a top 8 contesting team. But he did great with the signings that we were given, considering we made some pretty lackluster signings. I think Tom Eisenhuth and Carl Flanagan were really the only good signings we made this season. And with them...
So basically, if you don't understand Boucher's yap, what he's trying to say is that the Dragons like to steal everything from the Sharks. They steal our coaches, players... They just like to steal from the Sharks. They love stealing, don't they? And then they think it's good. All jokes aside, though, I do think the Dragons had a phenomenal season, especially under Shane Flanagan. He is a great coach. I'm going to put them in the C tier. Lucia's biased.
But yeah, they brought in Damien Cook, so he's probably going to bring a lot of senior leadership into the team, which probably will hopefully make them come in the 8th.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully. Who else did they sign?
Val Holmes,
okay. I reckon they're going to make the 8.
Gutho.
Possibly Gotho, maybe out of Carl.
I've got them making the 8 for next year. But.
So for right now, I'm going to chuck them in D tier.
D tier?
Dragons, yeah. They're pretty washed, mate.
What do you think? What do you think, Mr. Biased?
I would have put them
S
like
tier.
I would have put them
S
probably
tier.
no, not S tier. I would have put them. I would have put them. I would have put them in C tier as well with the Cowboys, behind the Cowboys.
Bro, get out of here.
No, okay.
Yeah, I agree.
C tier. I think they had a good season, but it was fairly average compared to the other teams. And next up, we got Parramatta. Big fall off for Parramatta, finishing 10th at the end of last season.
Parramatta, absolute disappointing season. I expected way more with the team they had. They've got a great forward pack. They've got a good spine. They did lose Mitch Moses, but why I'm going to put them so low is I think it comes down to one, they sacked their coach while they're already in the midst of a bad season. I just think they should have let Brad Arth ride it out for the rest of the season. 2, they just have zero depth in their spine. Moses went down and there was a new spine player every week. I think one of their shining lights was Blaze Talongi, but once again they let him go, so very disappointing there. For that, I'm going to put Parramatta as our first F-tier team.
Yeah, damn. I agree as well. I think Parramatta's season probably could have been close to a top 8 team, but they really underperformed this season.
F-tier.
And, bringing in Trent Barrett as the interim coach probably wasn't the best idea for them as well. Alright, next team up, we got the Newcastle Knights. Slight regression from the Knights. They finished 5th at the end of last season and scraped their way into the top 8 at the end of this season, just finishing 8th. Key signings like Kai Pearce-Paul, I think, was probably the biggest signing that they made from the Super League. He proved to be a quality signing for them. So where do we have him?
Sharpe was good too as well this season,
Sharp, yeah.
especially on fantasy. He was racking up all the points.
I think Newcastle really showed that they've got great fullback depth. David Armstrong had a phenomenal game at Magic Round, which I was there for, and hopefully us 3 will be there at Magic Round next year.
Yes, we will.
We'll be looking into that. I think I'm going to go Newcastle in the C tier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. C tier.
Fair. All right, next up we
Panthers.
have this year's premiers, the Panthers.
They're just always winning. They're too good, man.
Yeah,
And
even with
there's
the departures that they had at the start
it's
of this
crazy.
season.
Even
they
last season as well.
Last season
and
as
now
well,
again, like losing Luai and a few other players.
Yeah, they've got a great development system, Penrith. They just have... someone leaves, they just pick someone out of the juniors straight
And they
through.
perform really well.
And they still do amazing.
Yeah, I don't think much more needs to be said
S
there.
tier.
Quite obvious S tier.
Yeah. So, Bunnies finished just outside the top 8 at the end of last season. I believe they were at the top of the ladder for halfway through the season in 2023.
Since round 12, 2023, the Rabbitohs have
Fallen
just
off.
been missing. They did have Latrell Mitchell out for majority of the season.
Yeah.
And had some off-field issues there. They did lose Lachlan Ilias, their halfback. He was out for a whole season from round 4.
Campbell Graham as well.
And Campbell Graham, yeah, as well.
Campbell Graham was another big loss. Hopefully, I can see the Rabbitohs on paper being a premiership contending team. However, they just can't seem to put it together. I think with Wayne Bennett coming in, he's definitely going to help improve that. But for this season, I am going to put the Rabbitohs as our second F tier team.
I was going to say D tier, but
No, I don't
F
think
tier sounds more reasonable. So yeah.
F tier. All right, next team up, we got the Raiders.
Canberra
The Raiders.
Slight regression from the Raiders from last year. They finished 8th at the end of last
they did
season,
about the
making
same,
footies,
really.
finals, and they ended up finishing 9th this season. I think the youth signings that they made really helped them out, bringing in Ethan Strange from the youth to play, signing Kale Weeks. Zach Hosking was good for the first 3 weeks of the season before he got injured.
Yeah.
I do have a bit of a story time with Chevy Stewart.
Story time, here we go.
There you go.
So I think I probably would have been like 16, playing down in the Shire, rock up, and their number 1 is Chevy Stewart. That was not good news for me. I think he broke my ankles multiple times that day. I went home and I was like, I'm never playing footy again, man. I think I had my worst performance ever against Chevy Stewart. I rate him so highly because I've actually played against him and I've seen what it's like to play against him. That man is quick, agile, definitely got big things coming for him. I've got big raps on Chevy Stewart for next season. I know they didn't make the 8, but I'm going to put them in B tier based off the youth development they've had come through the club. I think give that 1-2 years, they're going to be a really great side.
So 2023, they finished 8th. So they made 2024 they finished 9th. So it's not really too bad. They just jumped down 1 spot. They should be finishing higher than that. I'm going to chuck them in C tier.
Jack White and leaving didn't really do much to them. I think they still played the same brand of football they did. Ethan Strange plays a lot like Jack White, and I think him getting more experience within the squad and playing with a veteran half like Jamal Fogarty, I think he's going to have a long way to go to prove that he's one of the best. He could be one of the best in a few years' time. I also agree with James. I'm going to put them in the B tier, and I think averages out to a B tier placement. All right, next team up, we got the Roosters. So, ended up finishing 7th last year and ended up bringing in Dom Young, I think, is the big sign, and Spencer Leniu, actually, as well. Spencer Leniu being the guy to replace JWH. And those signings proved to be some quality signings. They ended up finishing 3rd and having the best attack in the league.
Look, I think Roosters had a great year, no doubt about that. Start of the year, I was having doubts about James Tedesco. I was pulling all the comments. He's washed up. He's no good. He needs to retire soon. But he proved he's still got it. He can perform at the top level. James Tedesco really impressed me this year. I do take back those comments. He really showed up. Very impressive year for the Roosters. However, come finals time, they were a bit of a letdown. They just were smashed by Penrith that first week, straight through against Manly, and then got shut out by Melbourne rather quickly. So I'm torn between putting them in low A tier or high B tier. I think for the squad they had, and considering that they lost Sam Walker, I will put them in the A tier.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they had a good season, apart from those injuries that they had before finals, Radley, Sam Walker, and Brandon Smith.
Manu was out for a fair bit.
Yeah,
just
those three got
well.
injured around, before finals, which really made it hard for them. I'm going to chuck Roosters in A tier.
Yeah, okay. I was going to put them at the top of the B tier, honestly. I think still a pretty good season for their standards.
Yeah.
And I think Angus Crichton's redemption story is one to be looked at as a
Sweet.
highlight for this
Yeah, he
season.
played really good this season.
I'm fine to slide them towards
A tier.
the
Low
low A
A
tier.
tier.
Yeah.
Alright.
All right, next team up, we got Manly.
Manly.
So,
Yeah.
Anthony Seibold bringing in
The
good
best
old Luke
player
Brooks.
of all time, Luke Brooks.
The GOAT, Luke Brooks, proved to be pretty good. They went from 12th last season and ended up finishing 7th.
I think Luke Brooks excelled as a 5'8" this year. He doesn't have to control the game as much. He's got Daly Cherry Evans to do that for him. When Turbo did play, he was really good. Towards that back end of the season, I was seeing signs of a 2021 Tom Trbojevic. He was scoring a hat-trick here and there. I think if he wasn't injured during that finals run, I feel like they could have taken out the Roosters in week 2. I think they probably would have ended in week 3 anyways. But I was impressed with the Manly season. I'm happy to put them high B tier.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I think so too. B tier.
Yeah, I think B tier is probably best.
They had a bit of a shocking performance when they came to finals against the Roosters.
They did have a good game against the Bulldogs. They were bringing it back in the second half.
Oh, was that week 1?
Week 1,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, week 2 Roosters.
So, Manly end up finishing in the B tier. So, next team up, we got James's good old Cronulla Sharks.
Yeah, the Sharks.
So,
yeah, Nico
Sharks,
Lyons. Yeah.
Nico Lyons. Sharks ended up finishing 6th at the end of last season. Not too bad for their standards. Ended up bringing it back around to finish
That's pretty good. That's a
4th
good
at the
little
end
jump.
of this season. I don't think they bring in any big players. They lost Connor Tracy, which didn't prove to be a big of a deal for them.
Yeah. Main thing with the Sharks here was giving Braden Trindle more minutes. The discovery of Daniel Atkinson, especially while Hines was out. I think Hines missed probably 10 to 12 weeks total. We finally did break the curse, so once again, Nico Hines, he's just not quite there. I'm hoping, he always starts the season well, I'm hoping we don't pick him for Origin so he can just keep up his form. Look, I think it was an improvement from last year. I still think that the Sharks do have room to grow, so I'll put them in the A tier.
Really, A tier. I was going to say B tier.
I was going to say B tier as well.
Yeah, A tier is
You
a bit
reckon?
high, man.
Next team up, we got the Melbourne Storm. So, ended up finishing 3rd at the end of last season, and Pappenhausen coming back from his injury was a welcome.
A big win for them.
Beautiful
Big
sight,
win, yeah.
beautiful sight to see.
And
Jerome Hughes, Dalian medalist, Harry Grant, Dalian Hooker of the Year, Eli Katoa, Dalian second row of the year. He had a massive year. I think Melbourne were just, they're Mr. Consistent. Craig Bellamy keeping them honest. They had a great year. I can't fault them in any way possible. I think they deserve an S tier.
I think they deserve the S tier as
S
well.
tier.
The 3-time now Wooden Spooners,
Yeah.
3-time S tier.
They're just
S tier
always-
team.
the Tigers, and they brought in some pretty good players at the start of the season.
What
We
are
had
they-
Justin Olam, Jaden Sullivan, Aiden Caesar, and the development of Lockie Galvin as well.
Lockie Galvin.
Even
was
Benji
definitely-
coming in and take on the coaching role.
Yeah, Benji
I
as well.
expect them to do better.
I mean, losing Luke Brooks as well was
Luke Brooks, losing Luke Brooks just absolutely destroyed the Tigers season. They would have won the comp if they kept him, but they let him go. All jokes aside, Lockie Galvin's development was really good for the Tigers this year. But once again, they just failed to perform. They had John Bateman, Isaiah Papali'i. They had a monster forward pack, and they had some good halves pairings behind it, and they just weren't able to execute. The Tigers just disappointed me. They're going straight to F tier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
F
think
tier.
anything
That's
other
fair.
than F tier wouldn't be a bad thing for them.
Sorry, Jake.
I wanted to see how they're going to go next year with Galvin and Luai and the halves as well. It'll be very interesting to see how they play them. Inconsistent team, the Titans. So they ended up finishing the same spot this year and last year as well. They finished 14th in
Nothing
both
special
seasons.
with them.
Nothing
No,
special for
again.
them.
I thought Des was going to be able to do more with that team. Once again, really disappointing. David Fafita, he's supposed to be one of the best players in the game. He's just not able to be a game breaker.
Yeah.
I think they had some good shining points. They had that good run towards the end of the season. Keanu Keeney was firing. Jaden Campbell was firing. They had like that small run of games that they played really good and they didn't lose for a few weeks going.
Yeah.
So for that, I'm going to put the Titans in D tier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
They
Nothing too much.
they did have those shining lights that make me go, can they actually do something in the comp next year? But
Yeah.
I just don't think they're there yet. It wasn't a horrendous season, but definitely wasn't anything great. So I'll put them in the D tier.
That's fair. D2.
I think Reed and Campbell-Gillard coming in next year probably help them move up the ladder a little bit more, but I still don't see them making it next year, probably dwelling around that 12th, 11th spot. So I agree with putting him in the D2.
easy.
And my opinion, the team that was the biggest disappointment this season, we got the Warriors.
The Wars.
Ended up finishing in the top 4 last year, and this year they ended up
Bottom
finishing 13th.
Bottom 5.
And they ended up bringing in some big signings. Kirk Capewell, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck were the biggest signings that they made this year. And they somehow ended up regressing from last season.
Look, I had high hopes for the Warriors. I thought they were going to repeat what they did last year.
Yeah.
Sean Johnson was firing all last year. He did miss quite a bit of the year. They were quite unfortunate with injuries. I know Tuivasa-Sheck missed quite a few. Chancellor Clockstad missed a few games. So I think they could have made the 8 if they didn't have those injuries to those key players. However, I'm still disappointed with the Warriors season. Unfortunately, I'm putting the Wars in the D tier.
Yeah.
Really, D tier.
Yeah.
I was going to say C tier. They weren't too bad. They were still pretty good. Like, SJ still had a good season.
Yeah,
Not
but
as good as last season, though.
to go from 4th all the way down to that.
Yeah.
And it's a D tier for me.
We're chucking
D-tier
we're
for
chucking
me
in
as
D
well.
tier. That's fair.
Second season syndrome really did hit the Warriors,
Yep.
but that is all the teams done, and there is our tier list. So that was our tier list done. If you have any differing opinions, please be free to let us know down in the comments. If you like watching us, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram, and we'll be doing more studio sessions regularly.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.